And we talk.
Well, that was the ritual. As I said, it was written by Zeno Jr. and performed by the students of Faizabad Senior Secondary School. Now, I have with me a panel of people involved in, let's say, social work, so I could include everybody. Because this particular play was suggested as part of Family Life Week. Now, Family Life Week was last week, but I thought that this is the sort of play that could lead to a healthy discussion on what are the essential things that we can do for Family Life Week. Now, let me introduce you to the panel. Over on the left is Mrs. Annette Wiltshire, who is a former principal of a senior comprehensive school. And next to her is Selwyn Raghunathan, who is coordinator of Family Life Week. Over on my right, Dr. Noble Bihari, and next to him is Assistant Superintendent Lorna Robley. Well, let's get right into it. What were your first impressions of the play?
Well, I felt that out of the play itself, we see a number of problems that our children have in the society, and problems that we as educators, we as parents, we as members of a society must come to grips with.
Yeah. Well, I thought that the situation portrayed there was very, very typical of a large part of our school population. When I saw it 4 years ago, I felt that it showed in a very, very vivid manner the problems of the new schools as they got off the ground. And now, 4 years later, I think that the situation has broadened out to include a large percentage of our young people at all levels in all kinds of schools.
And Doctor?
Well, first of all, I must say that I thought the acting was quite good for that group of people. I think the play covered a lot of the problems that we see and unfortunately will continue to see for a very long time. And it also makes us aware of the sort of role parents and teachers and people in the community like ourselves should play in trying to remedy these problems that occur, especially in the teenage population.
Superintendent.
It's a very good play, well acted, very strong language, but it brings out forcefully the problems encountered both by children and parents in our society today. The problems the children face and the job that we as parents and social workers have to deal with that problem.
Now, if you have to try and solve, well, we can't solve it tonight, we only have 50 minutes, but if you have to try and give some suggestions, where should we start? Let's start with the home, as we saw in this play. What is the influence of the home, or what should be the influence of the home? Anybody?
I think that the first step is the admission of the problem. I think too often we try to pretend that those kinds of problems do not really exist, or they do not have this sort of importance or impact on both the parents and the children as they really have. So I think the first thing is to sort of do a lot of looking inwards and seeing what is really there or what is not there. That's the very first step.
The influence of the broken home. What about that?
Well, there is the influence of a broken home, but there are lots of homes which could not be described as broken in our society, in that the parents or the responsible adults are there, but they are quite separate and alienated from the children in all kinds of ways.
What we see well, maybe coming from the play is that there are lots of relationships or relationship problems involved. There might be parent-to-parent relationship problems, parent-to-child relationship problems, child-to-teacher or teacher-to-child relationship problems. And these surely assist with the kind of problems that we have seen there.
What about passing the responsibility? I mean, something that the children kept saying, Omega kept saying, you know, the parents were passing the responsibility.
Yes, well, I was going to, before I answer that, I'd like to say that my colleague over there has been talking a lot recently about parenting. I think the important thing is how parents are made, you know. Parents should be trained to be parents. Now, if parents cannot be trained to be parents, or would-be parents cannot be trained to be parents, and they just happen to be parents, not because it was planned, that becomes a problem, you know. The father doesn't know his role, the mother doesn't know her role. But just suppose that the parents, the whole thing was planned, then the training of the child should begin from a very early age. The people who work in the field of psychology say that the training of the child should start at birth. All the moral issues, you know, I mean, religion, good manners, all this sort of thing. What is right and what is not right. If this is done, we hope that, you know, what is done at home will continue in the school and after school and so on. So that when the young teenage girl meets the sort of problems that we see in the film, the Rasta boy in the corner, the chap who offers her a joint, she will know what to say. You see, I think the whole problem is that children nowadays do not know how to respond, how to react when these situations arise. And of course, the influence of their peers in school, it is all right. I mean, nobody's going to know that sort of thing, you know. And how to hide from the parents. Also, the parents who don't really want to know because they're too busy, and so the children go astray. So I think the whole thing is education in the home and the family and the community, and people like ourselves who can help parents to deal with these problems.
These girls came from a school, a large school, with lots and lots of children. Do you think the size of the school has an influence, one way or the other?
I think that there is something to be said for a school that is too small and a school that is too large. There appears to be of size and in-between size, which is really the sort of best situation. Too small, you're deprived of, you know, knowing a good cross-range of society, or having a number of possible interactions and what have you, and too large on the other end, where you might lose contact. But I think that it is possible for us to have large schools and still not be as impersonal as people perceive these large institutions to be. In that I think that Trinidad children, say 1,500 children, Trinidad children are not the same as 1,500 children in New York. Lots of them are coming out of the same area, the same neighborhood, they know each other. And so that there's a plus in a country like ours as compared with a school the similar size, say in England or part of the States. So I think that it is possible to organize these schools in such a way that they're not as impersonal as one could imagine them to be from the outside. I would like, however, to follow up on what Noble is saying about education and training starting in the home and then continuing in the school. The point is that if we're talking about training for parenthood, we are talking about education which does not give you a certificate at the end. We're talking about the education about being humane and caring and sensitive. We're talking about making decisions, as he's saying. The young people don't know how to choose and how to respond to pressure from outside. And I think that our adults in this very exam-oriented society have to make definite decisions as to what they want schools to do and to support them when they're doing it. Because lots of parents feel that time spent on these areas is really time being taken away from getting ahead with the exams.
No,
And
but-
in schools, it's not an easy thing to put together.
Yeah. What about good schools? I mean, the child talks about good school. You went to a good school.
Or who or what makes a good school?
I think the children themselves make a good school. The interest of the children, in addition to the teaching put out, the effort put out by the teachers. All schools can be good schools, but it takes a lot of effort, both on the part of the children and on the part of the teachers. And the parents must do their bit also to afford or to encourage these children to make a school a good school. The schools are not just buildings.
Yeah.
Schools are people.
They spoke glibly about truancy, for example, and liming after school. Have you, in your experience, had to deal with things like that?
Oh yes,
an
we,
officer?
we do have to deal with situations like that. Truancy and liming, that is because some of them do not have parents to go home to as soon as school is dismissed. And they have lots of time. There's a long time lapse between the break of school and the coming home of the parents, because you find today most mothers have to work to make two ends meet. And this seemed to create one of the problems that the children are facing now.
Is there something parents could do? I mean, working parents, working mothers. I mean, what can we do?
I think that in some of the country areas, I have seen this. It takes a long time to get to school, either because there's no transport or because some problem or other. I have seen children walking miles in the Rio Claro area, for instance. It must take hours to get to school. I mean, I'm sure that by the time they get to school, it's time to go back home.
Mm-hmm.
It is very easy for them then on the way not to worry to go at all. It's a chore, you see? That is the kind of thing we have to think about. The services that are provided for children. Not all of us have cars, and, you know, we may live in areas where there isn't a good transport system and so on. So the taxi driver or the so-called friendly gentleman passes and offers to give a drop. Sometimes it can be difficult for a young teenage girl to say no because she wants to get to school. And she may not be able to know how to say, you know,
Yeah.
no. Yeah.
What, I was thinking of the society, for example.
Right, now that you have mentioned that, we have come from a society that we could call a caring society. We have had neighborhoods in the past that sort of took care of children who came home when their parents were not in. Or maybe it's a relationship problem. Some people are not relating well with their neighbors, or they're not organizing, you know, systems that would support their children when they get back home on an afternoon, given the kind of situation we have. I think maybe the society could help in that way. If we have better relationships with our neighborhoods, and if we may have to go back, people do not like to go back to the past, but I think these support systems were very important, and we could fall back on them to help with our community parenting.
You know, this sort of discussion can go on for hours, but I must pause briefly for a commercial. Welcome back to this brief discussion. We are just finishing at the point about those children, for example, who get home from school early. I mean, there's nobody there, so they have the time, the space, and the opportunity to do almost anything. Now, what about, now I have a personal thing myself. This is about double standards. Now, over the weekend, my good friend Ronnie Williams said, talking about my program, Play Your Cards Right, he asked the question whether we were not doing ourselves an injustice and encouraging the belief that to obtain a better material thing in life, you do not have to work and save, you only have to say higher or lower. Well, I know Ronnie was making a joke. He's my good friend. I always depend on him for almost any help I need. But I took it as a joke, but then 4 teenagers came to the studio and said to me, how could Mr. Williams say something like that, talking about, you know, raise higher or lower, when it seems that for poor people to get a house, you have to do the lottery, which is a sort of bigger form of play your cards right. Well, I didn't have the answer to that question, but it shows you that the teenagers, they're thinking of double standards. I mean, my friend running, but I had to say it, you know. The other point I think I should make is the question of bad manners. Aren't we, as adults, exhibiting too much bad manners in public? I mean,
Well, I'm particularly concerned about the kind of bad manners we exhibit on the road, and so frequently. I mean, I feel it as a person. I feel a tremendous violation. But so frequently there are children on the road, at the side of the road, in cars, when adults are making horrible kind of gesticulations. And I'm particularly concerned about this very horrible, obscene sign, which I think we are beginning to import into our culture, and that it's happening more and more on the road. Even women are making very obscene signs to other women and to other men. And I think that the children always bring up this question of double standards, what adults do and what they tell them, and then what they're supposed to do.
I'm very worried really about, there are also the responsible people responsible people in the society, you know, people opening bazaars or farms or things like that. And in the opening, being the guest, for example, guest of honor, you attack the people who invited you. I mean, you're the guest of honor and you're attacking the host. My grandmother always said, never stand on the river stone and bath out the river. But now you find that prominent people do that. They are invited to open a function and they insult the people who invited them. I mean, this is terrible.
Oh, well, Holly, Horace, while we are on double standards, in family life education, maybe a lot of people believe that knowledge of family life is the most important thing. But along with knowledge is the whole process of doing things, setting a good example. And it is only if we, as adults, set good examples that we are going to be really and truly teaching family life education.
Well, this discussion could go on for hours, but unfortunately we have to end. And I have to thank Annette Wilshire, Selwyn Raghunanan, Noble Bihari, and Assistant Superintendent Lorna Robley for expressing some views on family life and what we can do to have a better relationship with our children and even our parents, and incidentally with our fellow man. Ladies and gentlemen,